right, guys, welcome back to Revive School. Here we are. This is the final day of this week. We are in Lesson 14, Job 20. Now, we just have come out of Job 19, where really it's kind of the exciting verse in the sense of Job saying, hey, man, despite all this, I have a living Redeemer. I have a promised Redeemer that's truly going to, in some sense, going to pull me out of all of these situations. And, I just love Mindy's paintings. Can you imagine at the end what this is going to look like after 66 books? When you look at all of them, one, I hope we remember the titles for them. But then two, I hope that we see that all of it portrays Christ. It portrays the Messiah. And that's really what Job 19 is hey, amidst all of this, here you have the Messiah. Here you have the promised Redeemer amidst it all. And then what do you know? Just when there's something positive, enter a friend, a.k.a. Zophar. You have Eliphaz, you have Bildad. Both of them have talked twice now. Both of them have given their speeches twice. And so Zophar wants a turn. Hey, I'd like to talk twice. So what do you know? He goes from Job 11, 1 through 20, his first speech, to now he's going to go to the second speech where MacArthur says what Zophar is going to do here, he's going to ask Job to reconsider the fate of the wicked. I think this speech right here, many commentators would say, Constable says the same thing as well, is that this speech will hurt Job more than any so far. It's the most direct, it's the most jerkish, if that's even a word. And the problem is Zophar's he's mad about it. The crazy thing is that there's nothing new to say anymore. Like it just is, all he does is just spewing passion now. And so what you're going to see in the first three verses, according to Constable, is that you're going to see Zophar's anger. So you're going to see, just for 3 verses, his anger brewing. Okay? So here's what happens. He says, and Zophar the Naamathite replied, this is why my unsettling thoughts compel me to answer, because I am upset. Well, okay. What does that look like, Zophar? I have heard a rebuke that insults me, and my understanding makes me reply. Well, did Job ever even ask him? Well, Kevin, if you go to Job 16, verse 3. Job 16, verse 3, Job asked why his friends answered him. He said, is there no end to your empty words? What provokes you that you continue testifying? Well, really what you're seeing then is Zophar in verse 3. He said, I've heard a rebuke that insults me, and my understanding is what makes me reply. Now, here's the crazy thing. We're gonna watch this whole thing unfold. We're going to talk about the wickedness again. You can kind of see where it's going to go. We're going to talk about the punishment of sin and where that's even going to go. But Philip Brooks has a great quote, and he says this, the truest help that we can render an afflicted man is not to take his burden from him, but to call out his best strength that he may be able to bear it. Let me give you an example. Studying the book of Job has not been easy. Studying Kevin, how many lessons is this? We're on 370, 380, I'm sure somewhere in there.
378.
378 lessons. Like, at times, I just feel like I got nothing in me. But every once in a while, I'll get a text from Laura, my wife Laura, and she'll be like, just keep going. She doesn't say quit. She doesn't say, hey, you should stop doing that. She encourages me. She calls out the strength that's within me and says, let's go, let's do this. And the reality is I have to do the same for her as she's writing her daily words. And to me, that's what we're after here. That's the friendship that we're after. That's the comforting that we're after. That's the counseling that we're after. Don't just say, hey, man, beg it and quit. No, man, let's go. I'm with you. Let's do this together. What's the hardest thing about Revive School for you, think, Rich?
Just keeping pace with, being relative with what we're reading and, trying to be positive, helping you when it gets tough.
This is a lot of work, but one of the things that you're not going to hear from us is, all right, Kevin, you know what? Just stop. It's fine. Just quit. Yeah, you're not going to hear that from us. And I think the point is that when you go through these times, like that's the point that we say, Kevin, you're really gifted in this. Just keep going, man. You're getting refined in this process. Like I see growth in you in this time. Hopefully you see some kind of growth in me. And like that's the whole point in this. But what you see with Zophar is, he's like, well, why are you struggling? Let's kick him down. There's no extended hand saying, I'll help you. It's absolutely the complete opposite. And if not, he probably wants to punch at each other. I don't know, I think it's just an interesting perspective of this little team. Like we have to press in, and all of you that are listening, like you have to press in as well. This is not easy reading the Bible every day. You're like, well, yeah, I'm reading the Bible. Man, it's hard. Come on, you got 1 or 2 chapters. There's going to be seasons where you're like, I love this. And then you have a vacation scheduled for a week and you're like, oh, I think my point is like we want to say, let's do this together. And so what you see here on the scriptures is, the first 3 verses are his anger. But then what you're going to see in the verses 4 through 11 is this. You're going to see, according to, obviously, to Constable on this one, is brief prosperity of the wicked. In other words, it is not going to last long. This is Zophar talking to his friend. Don't you know that ever since antiquity, from the time man was placed on earth, the joy of the wicked has been brief, and the happiness of the godless has lasted only a moment. In other words, the joy of the wicked, it just literally, it comes and goes. And honestly, if we're really serious about this, it's your life, Job. Whatever you thought was great, it's gone. Everything seems to be aimed at Job. Job would like others, he's going to suffer the consequences because of his sin. That's the same old story that we hear over and over and over. So let's just, before we go on, I said we were going to do this at the very beginning of the week. Why on earth are we studying all this? Like, why do we care about Eliphaz and Bildad and Zophar and Job? Like, who really cares about reading about everybody's complaints? I think if we're honest, we've asked that question probably 12 times this week. If we're going to use Job's language 10 times, we have to ask this. Why are you going to deal with this 10 times? What is the point? Well, I went to Kent Hughes, a commentary, and I just thought, okay, Lord, I don't use his stuff often, but I want a different perspective of Job 20. I want to see, why do I care about teaching this to everybody? And it's pretty obvious. Go to 2 Timothy 3, 16 through 17. 2 Timothy 3, 16 through 17. Some of you already have this memorized. All Scripture is inspired by God. Except for Job. No, it's all. Right? All of it is inspired by God and is profitable for teaching, for rebuking, for correcting, for training in righteousness. And then in verse 17, so that the man of God may be complete, equipped for every good work. So I pulled back on verse 16. And I said, God, if this is really profitable, okay, if you go back to verse 16, Kevin, if this is profitable, where does this fit in this? For teaching, for rebuking, for correcting, for training in righteousness? Is it all of the above? Well, one of the things I think you can say very clearly is it's a warning. Don't be like these idiots. Huh?
Is it rebuking?
I don't know what it is. It's just venting. Yeah, I think so. Don't be like these guys. I'm going to give you 3 benefits of why we're going to study this. I love this perspective. But I just think from the very outside, looking in, why do we look at, as this is profitable? One is just don't be like these guys. Okay, that sounds super obvious. But then why do we listen to all of these descriptions in Job 18 about death and hell? And then in Job 20, as we get into this period of judgment. What's crazy is that the fact about Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, not just in the content what they communicate, Kent Hughes says, but it's also in their misapplication. So let me just tell you this, from the very beginning, we need to be careful and be cautious of people that take the truth and then they twist it for themselves. And so as we go into this period, you guys, in fact, Kevin, can you go there? Go to the book of Jude. Now, that'll be confusing. Go to the book of Jude right before Revelation. It's interesting in verse 3, I think there's actually something here to this. And in verse 3, it says, "Dear friends, although I was eager to write to you about the salvation we share, I found it necessary to write and exhort you to contend for the faith that was delivered to the saints once for all." And so this is it almost feels like there's this period of contending for more in what you see with Job. And in Jude obviously says, hey, by the way, there's going to be a period of time that we're no longer just talking about salvation, but guys, we need to fight for our faith. We need to defend our faith. And so I feel like in a weird way, you guys, we got to be careful about how people are misapplying the truth. And it happens all the time in the United States. I mean, let's just call it out as it is. Jesus loves everybody. He does. But it doesn't mean that he actually endorses homosexual living. Like, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. Oh yeah, alcoholism. Oh, well, it's part of my family. And no, man, God still recognizes that alcoholism is a major issue. It should not be a lifestyle. Oh, well, the whole divorce thing, I don't know. It's fine. No, it's not. And at some point, we have to say, quit taking the truth so it makes and works for you. We have to contend for this thing. And I feel like what happened with these three knuckleheads, these three friends, they're always taking the truth and they're applying it so that it fits their theology. That's what we're after. They're writing something, they're speaking something so it fits their theology. And so what are the benefits? There's our three guys. Kent Hughes says there's three benefits, okay, of why you and I should actually care about Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. Why we should actually care about this perspective. Well, let's go into this process. And guys, I love each point. Let's just see what the Lord does in this. And one is that they terrify us and they move us to warn unbelievers that unless they repent, this will indeed be their destiny. Okay, I'm going to read it again. Just hang in here, okay? This is a little bit more vague. Just hang in here, okay? Because the other two are really, I think they'll make more sense. So this right here, okay, they terrify. Remember, they're talking about death all the time. Remember, there's some truth to that. So what it is it serves as a warning to unbelievers that unless they repent, that death will be their end. I think that's true. Like, they're talking about the light going out. They're talking about being trapped in a snare. They're talking about a criminal coming and robbing them of their life. I think the tree being uprooted. I think that it's inevitable. Death is coming for all. That's a fair statement, not twisted out of. So why do we study this? Because we need to realize that death is real.
Consequences for our sin.
Consequences for our sin are real. Now, I just think it's one of those. I like the fact that those three are so concerned about death. I think actually Christians should probably be more concerned about the lost and what's going to happen to them. So Eliphaz, Zophar, and Bildad, at least one truth that we can hang on to is that they're actually, I don't know, okay, if they're genuinely caring about his eternal status. I don't think so. But the point is that we should. Rich, you want to add anything? Kevin, you want to add anything to this?
Well, somebody once told me before I became a believer, I was having a conversation with somebody, and I was like, well, I'm not going to hell. I mean, I'm a good person. I've never, I've never murdered anybody. And this individual was like, well, yeah, you are going to hell.
Just called it out.
Yeah, I that's my wife now.
It's a way to win over a spouse right there.
It's a true story.
It is true. And but God bless Shelley for going there. Many of us Christians are afraid to say that because it sounds judgmental. Or we're so, bumper stickered out on the back of our cars about human rights. It's sickening that we're afraid to say anything. Then somebody's going to create another bumper sticker and say, well, death to the Christians because they say people are going to hell. Like, we got to stop caring, now hang on here for a second, about what people think when we let them know what the truth actually says. And you can say it in love, you can say it in grace, you can say this in a way that at least it's out there. You don't have to shove it down their throat and saying you're going to burn in hell. But we got to actually care enough to even have these conversations with people.
To add to that, though, what it did do, though, it did really get me thinking, though, about it, about where would I really spend eternity. I mean, I was kind of processing that already, but like the fact that somebody had actually told me that was a real possibility and they were confident in that fact, I started thinking like, man, how does that apply to me? Like, am I really going to do that? Because before, nobody ever told me that. So I thought, hey, I'm not going to wind up there. So you start thinking through those things. I'm not saying that's the best option or way to share the gospel, but it got me thinking.
I think it does for any human being that has a heartbeat. If you talk about where you're going to go when you die, they're going to process that when you leave. Even if you don't even say heaven or hell, I wonder where I would go. So one of the simple truths and benefits of the book of Job that we can learn from their friends that we give them a hard time, at least Again, whether their motives are pure or not, I don't know that answer, but at least they're concerned about death. We should as well. I think it's a very simple point. All right, let's go to the next one. Hey, you guys, that's a takeaway. It's a tangible takeaway of 3 guys that aren't living life so well. We should care about where people are going after they die. So, just going to tell you, you can always start talking about him wherever you go. It's pretty easy. I have no problem saying you can go to timerevive.com, order these, and start trying. Just walk around and start loving people and see what God does. It's a process. You don't just like do the Zophar and be like, hey, notice you got a problem with your arm. Boy, that sin must have hurt. Like you can't call people out because they have pain because they're sinning. That's what these guys did. And then don't use that as your transition to death. Do this in the way that the Lord would do it. Love, listen, discern, and respond. Okay, death is real. We should care. Now, what else? They help us. These 3 guys, they help us grasp the depth. Okay, here we go. It's another kind of the depth of darkness. Okay, kind of similar, but let me say this, the depth of darkness and suffering. And then you know who that reflects? It's what the Lord experienced on the cross. So I want us to be encouraged that when we go through these periods of time, do not discount that God could be speaking to us in this process. In fact, Kevin, can you go to 2 Corinthians 5:21? 2 Corinthians 5:21, the depth of darkness and suffering. Now watch this. Paul is writing to the church of Corinth. It says, he made the one who did not know sin because he was perfect, but then he embraced and took on sin for our sake, for us, so that we might become the righteousness of God in him. So Christ took on the darkness. He took on the suffering so that we could have life. I think there's a lot here. In other words, Christ was the one who took on the wrath. He took on the suffering of his Father, and he became the sin for us. He went through the suffering. He went through the darkness just like Job did. Guys, any thoughts on the depth of darkness and suffering before we go to the 3rd and final point?
I think you start looking at it that way and how it compares to Christ and what he left to come here to earth, and then just the physical beating as he died on the cross and how gruesome it was. It's truly a picture of, I don't think even what Job suffered is
anything.
It's not comparable.
All right, so I just want to add, Job obviously helped paint a picture of the depth of darkness and suffering. But these are the 3 guys that we don't really like. I get tired of them. I'm tired of them complaining. I'm tired of them arguing. I'm tired of them talking. They talk too much. Job says he's tired of it too. But now let's go to number 3, the 3rd and final one from Kent Hughes. It says, I want to just read it first and then I'll write it, okay? If it is true that the disciples of Christ in this age do have, okay, in the same measure to drink the cup that he drank, then we do suffer with him in order that in the end we may be glorified with him. So in some way, I'm just going to drink the cup. There's a depth of darkness and suffering that we need to be okay with, but then at some point, like we have to understand, and where that takes us, at some point we have to embrace it and actually drink the cup, because in the end, we get glorified in the eternal state. Not here on earth, but in the eternal state. In fact, can you go to Romans 8, verse 17? Romans 8, verse 17, it says this, and if children, also heirs, heirs of God, and co-heirs with Christ, seeing that we suffer with him, so that we may also be glorified with him. It's funny to me. It's almost like this progression of these benefits. It's kind of surreal if you think about it, because first of all, they're talking about, hey, do you realize like the death could lead to life if you embrace Christ? But then you have to understand, as you know that that's the end goal, you know you're going to go through a period of darkness. You know you're going to go through this period of refining, just like Job did. But then at some point you have to embrace it and know that it's coming. You got to drink the cup. Why? Because it will lead to glorification. here's what I think is really cool about all this picture. Okay, I'm not saying it lines up perfectly, but I am going to say there's a point of justification. Then I am going to just say that there's a point of sanctification, okay, or holiness, right? And then the last point is this. Eventually, it leads to glorification. So what's interesting about these three guys that we really don't care about, we don't really even like, when you pull back and say, why do I have to keep listening to Zophar talk? What are the benefits? Well, maybe they point to depth. Maybe they point to the depth of darkness, and maybe they point to drinking the cup. And if they do, you're going to start looking more like Christ. I think to me, it's a pretty special picture of what this looks like. And so to go back to Zophar, now when you look at Zophar, you look at it maybe with a different lens, maybe with a lens of humility and just saying, okay, God, what are you trying to teach me here? Because when you go to Job 20, verse 6, this is Zophar talking, and he's describing the wicked. He says, though his arrogance reaches heaven and his head touches the clouds, he will vanish forever like his own dung. I mean, guys, I'm glad we did this part before this part. Because he's basically saying, hey, that whole Tower of Babel thing, I know he's not referencing this, but the Tower of Babel, they wanted to become like God. They wanted to build up, build up, build up. It says his arrogance reaches heaven. As his head touches the clouds, guess what? He'll vanish forever like his own poop, his own dung. Glad Drew's not here for this one. And then all of a sudden, I mean, I thought, well, God, how does this vanish? It's like a flush, psh, gone. Well, how else do you say it? All of a sudden, boom, he's just instantly gone. And then somebody goes, hey, where is he? If you're only listening on audio, it's probably better. It says he will vanish forever like his own dung. Those who know him will ask, where is he? It says in verse 8, he will fly away like a dream and never be found. He'll be chased away like a vision in the night. Oh, by the way, Job, we're describing you. He'll be chased away like a vision in the night. The eye that saw him will see him no more, and his household will no longer see him. His children will beg from the poor, for his own hands must give back to his wealth. This is one of the wealthy guys. All of a sudden they're saying, oh, the wicked, they're going to be begging for money. And then it says in verse 11, his bones may be full of youthful vigor, but he will lie down with him in the grave. In other words, you're going to see early death. Early death. Wicked only see early death. No good people. Crazy enough, if you do any kind of study of great men of God, Robert Murray McShine, 29 years old, Presbyterian minister, incredible impact in the world. William Borden, 25 years old, missionary, died in Egypt. David Brainerd, 29 years old, a missionary to the Native Americans. Can I just tell you, this argument it doesn't hold any water. It's not just the wicked who die early. And so what you're going to see is Zophar's anger in the first three verses, brief prosperity of the wicked. Hey, it comes and goes. And then what you're going to see in verses 12 through 19, you're going to see certain punishment of sin. In verses 12 through 19. So punishment is coming because of sin. So in verse 12 it says, though evil tastes sweet in his mouth and he conceals it under his tongue, though he cherishes it and will not let it go, but keeps it in his mouth, yet the food in his stomach turns into cobra's venom inside of him. In other words, evil is sweet. I like what Constable Nelson says, but the consequences of their behavior, it will bring about their downfall. It's this, hey, I want more, but they keep going back for more. In fact, Kevin, can you go to Proverbs 20, verse 17 for me? Proverbs 20, verse 17. It says, food gained by fraud is sweet to a man, but afterwards, I love this image, his mouth is full of gravel. And that's what he's saying will happen with the wicked. He swallows wealth in verse 15, but must vomit it up, for God will force it from his stomach. Verse 16, he will suck the poison of cobras. A viper's fangs will kill him. In other words, wicked eating will eventually lead to death. And obviously, we're talking about more than just eating. He will not enjoy the streams. The rivers flowing with This is kind of interesting, you guys. The wicked will not enjoy the streams, the rivers flowing with honey and cream. When you look at the book of Exodus, the land flowing with milk and honey. It's common for have the land of Canaan to experience this, and they say, oh, by the way, you're not going to experience the land flowing with honey. Verse 18, he must return the fruit of his labor without consuming. He doesn't even enjoy the profits from his trading, for he oppressed and abandoned the poor. He seized a house he did not build. There will be punishment for the sin that you live. I would agree. But remember, it's a matter of twisting this. This whole thing is twisted because they all say this is Job. And then they use another argument. So certain punishment of the sin, but now you're going to see God's swift judgment of the wicked. In verses 20 through 29. Because his appetite is never satisfied, he does not let anything he desires escape. In verse 21, nothing is left for him to consume, therefore his prosperity will not last. And at the height of his success, distress will come to him, the full weight of misery will crush him. This is Zophar talking to Job, describing the wicked, which he's implying, Job, this is going to happen to you. And when he fills his stomach, God will send his burning anger against him, raining it down on him while he is eating. If he flees from an iron weapon, an arrow from a bronze bow will pierce him. He pulls it out of his back, the flashing tip out of his liver. Terrors come over him. Total darkness is reserved for his treasures. A fire unfanned by human hands will consume him. It will feed on what is left in his tent. In other words, everything is going to be destroyed. The heavens will expose his iniquity and the earth will rise up against him. In other words, it doesn't get any better. In fact, it continues on in verse 28. The possessions in his house will be removed, flowing away on the day of God's anger. This is the wicked man's lot from God, the inheritance God ordained for him. And Zophar, bottom line, says this: Job, you need to repent. Job, you need to do something. Otherwise, you will radically lose it all. And all I can just say is this comes from a bad theology. So judgment is coming. The only thing I can tell you is I actually believe persecution is coming to all of us. Scripture talks about it in Matthew 5. We need to be ready for this, but it doesn't mean that it's judgment from God if we have to go through these trials and tribulations. But that's what Zophar is indicating. And so all I would just say is, because we have to put up with these guys for so long, please just remember this in the book of Job. Just remember that we do always need to think about death. We do need to think about the depth of darkness. And we do need to say, am I willing to drink the cup? Am I willing to go through this process? Because if we can understand the justification, sanctification, it will always lead to glorification. All right, guys, this is Job 20. You did it. You made it through another week of the book of Job, lesson 14. My prayer is, even though it's a hard book, my prayer is that the Lord would refine each one of us in this process. Thanks, guys. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.